All right.
Yo, greetings everybody. This is Wesley Pepper. This is the Lexcia podcast. This is episode 111, and I think this is the Wednesday after the Easter long weekend. So if you did the whole Easter fish and the beer, I was with the I was with the food and the alcohol. I had good fun and good. If you had fun, I hope you travel safe. All that shite and all that stuff around that. Just a big shout out to Mala Rama for coming to last week, my sister. Really enjoyed. I hope you guys listened to the episode. I thought it was incredible. She's also one of the few artists that I've spoken to recently that was speaking very, very boldly of amount of sales that actually came through really, really strong to that. Which shows you that this post-pandemic era is not as bad as I think as some would say. And I also found as the stuff around the tourism industry in Seychelles picked up. I thought that was super interesting too, because that also, it's interesting on multiple levels. Also, guys, like just remember, we are available on Facebook and this, the main, the like our page on YouTube. I post all the episodes and some other interesting information about all our guests on Facebook, so check that out. And here's the other major announcement, man. It's actually so I've been talking to the developers at MLab. They're actually looking to do the soft launch of Gallery 360 Africa on the 17th of April, which is next week Monday. I don't think it's like it's not a media thing or anything like that, but we finally done this. That's like over close to 5 years work and conceptualizing and COVID and all this rubbish. But we're finally there. So Gallery 360 Africa will be on the Play Store hopefully by next week this time. I have got a whole plan around it, around I'm testing it with various people and such. But the technology is available. So yeah, happy days regarding that. Moving on to today's episode. Today I'm talking to an old friend of mine. I know I actually want to share a story with him before we start. My brother, let me just share the story with you. This is how I got to know him. In the early 2000s, like early to late 90s, a long fucking time ago. I knew nobody. I knew nobody in Johannesburg in the arts, and I was trying to do we were trying to put together a book. And I don't even remember how. I think I spoke to PO from Funny Experience. I think it was him that introduced me. But I was like, yo, I'm putting together an anthology of book. I'm looking for poets. And Kabelo took me serious from that very day, my brother. You sent me, I remember you sent me Monday Blues. You sent me, shit. There was three, but I remember we took Monday Blues. That was everything. I was in my early 20s, my king. Like, nobody knew me. I was shy, I was insecure, I didn't know nothing about the industry. And here this guy just comes, boom, and when I read that, like, oh my fuck. So it's not just like sending work, it's like actually quite excellent work. My brother, just to my listeners, you are a writer, you are a photographer. I have know you as a photographer as well. And today we're talking about your sophomore book, Hungry on Arrival. So firstly, greetings and welcome to the yes. Firstly, greetings, brother. How are you, man? How are you doing?
No, I'm well. Going through changes since the last time we were together. I mean, you have been to my place, my home, and now the parents are gone. And it's us now, Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. We're getting on. So I think also it's that post pandemic aspect, and how learning to survive in the world and learning to get on with it. And I think more than any other thing, this has been one of the ways to get on with it. And for me, this is actually like one of the first things that I actually point out in the book, which is the book is would not be possible without the teachings and the lessons that I've learned from my late parents, and obviously the creative thinkers like yourself that I've encountered, and also the communities that have raised us. I think that's the first thing that I think I want to point out and highlight in the book. and as well as a way of getting on in terms of how the creative output as well has become a catharsis, has become a catalyst, and has been cathartic in dealing with or finding ways of therapy, or finding ways of dealing with adversity. I think this would not be possible, because I think if we encountered each other last year, this time when I was putting the book together, would not be able to have this conversation, because it was so much the publication becoming a vehicle in allowing one to to restore hope and a smile where there could have been a frown, So I think that's one thing about the publication that I revere the most, which is the ability to have provided me as, or open up a space for me to vent out, to cry, to find, to remember, actually, to also remember more so to remember, um, you know, the beauty that there is in the world, in spite of all the difficulties that post pandemic has brought onto us. So I think the book is not just only around the idea of poetry, um, and not it's not only poetry, actually. It's not only a poetry book. I think one of the things that you and I were things that were drawn to us, or the things that we were doing at the time, it was finding ways to publish books that were not just only about one medium, or rather poetry as a form, but it was also how that book is published, how that creative book is put together. So I think that's what the process has been for me in terms of putting this publication together. It has been more of a curatorship, as opposed to think around it as editing a poetry book. No, it's not only a poetry book. I mean, poetry is one of the forms. There's also stories. There's also drawings, sketches that you have contributed to the publication. There's also photographs that I have made, but I've also invited some of those creative thinkers that have inspired this journey, and also allowed and open up a space for a conversation, so that I mean, I come from a creative movement, and you are part of it. And certain people that I invited in the book, like Jacob Mawela, who I'm always co-curating photography shows with in and around the city of Johannesburg, and working together as part of Soweto Photo Album, the collective of photographers from Pimville, where I'm born, where I'm raised, in the township of Soweto. And allowing you also, Wesley, somebody who I lived with in the city of Johannesburg, as a brother, as a friend, to also bring in some of your own creative output into this collective. I think that's one of the things that I think we have been missing, in terms of when I think about some of the creative writing books that have inspired me. Would have been stuff like Stuff Rider, would have been books like New Contrast, or a New Coin, Botsotso. All of those were kind of literary journals where you see poets coming together with musicians, with visual artists, with photographers, all coming together and creating an aesthetic that speaks of the time. And I think that's what I have thought about mostly in this creative writing book. Yeah.
My brother, I would just like to come in there, and you actually ended where I wanted to take it. And just to the listeners, like Kabelo makes mention there of like collaborating with multiple mediums on one book. And I know you've been consistent with that, because you did a lot, you wrote a lot of poetry, photography, and vice versa. The one inspired the other, and so forth and so forth. And we even worked on that Black Pen. It was early 2000s, and it had the same. So that was give and take about 20 or so years ago. So just to my so I think saying in saying that it means your process is very fine tuned. It's very it's it's very fine tuned, and you have almost a legacy of it. So just for my listeners, my brother, can we? how did it because I also want to talk about your relationship with Botsotso. So how did it come that you decided to do Hungry on Arrival now as an outpost to the past? Because I know you were also at what's this place in Makanda there for a while. Roads. I know you were there for a while as well, you know, and as part of your masters, you also were to write this and that and that. So how did it come that you decided, you know, you're gonna, you're gonna start doing it now?
Yeah. Well, well, if you go through the book, you realize that there are pieces that emerge before I went to Makanda. There are pieces that emerge whilst I was at Makanda, and there are pieces that emerge post Makanda. And I think this is the thing about inspiration at times, because some pieces in the book are pieces that go back to my childhood.
Okay.
They speak about the traumas that one experienced as a child. However, I arrive at developing those pieces as a man. So when I speak about the aspect of remembering, I'm not only talking about remembering the instances that I had with my creative writing friends or my creative friends. I'm talking about remembering as a way of dealing with trauma as well, dealing with things that have influenced, that have shaped one in their way that they see the world. And I think that in itself has been a sense of cathartic process towards therapy, and sort of coming to terms with how one has developed as a growing person, as a growing poet, not just a growing poet, but also as a human being in the world. And I think one of the things is about learning to remember language, learning to remember, you know, the environment that, especially growing up in Soweto, where there was a lot of political turmoil, and obviously it happened throughout the country. However, there are aspects that I feel like in our own histories are underdocumented. One of the conversations that I was having along this past weekend with some of my friends about the idea of those kids who grew up in the 80s and the aspect of identity crisis, especially the kids that left the township schools and went to the so-called Model C schools. Those kind of narratives are sort of underrepresented in text. I mean, I know Kutlano Kopano, is it Mutlana, who writes the narrative about coconut. Well, she writes from a different perspective around somebody who grew up in the city and going to a white school. But there are also those who grew up in the township and went to the Model C schools. So those kind of narratives are not so much represented in text. So remembering is part of that, dealing with and coming to terms with our own individual histories, and see how they'll have shaped our own kind of path in the world as we move forward. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's partly part of the process in terms of the aspect of memory and
I like that.
and yeah. So that's also encompassed in the book. So essentially, obviously, as you're saying, like Botsotso post my creative writing MA at Rhodes, and they were very interested in publishing the work. However, for me, as I say, there were certain aspects, certain experiences, certain elements, if I should put it that way, which I felt they needed to come into a full circle in having a publication. So sometimes doing things because, you know, like forced creativity can somehow do a disservice to the material. And I think more than any other thing, the creative process is not always about the final product. It's always about the process. And I think for me, the process has been more electrifying. And obviously there is the book itself, however, but the creative process has been electrifying, making friendships with those people who have also contributed to the publication, and then eventually tying it together. And I think that's how I really feel about it. So
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like the I
yeah,
like the answer because you really speak to something that we cover extensively on this platform is the process, and I love the way you explained to it. Just for any new listeners, like we explore that subject matter extensively, and the reason is to give perspective to the
mm,
art. That's one reason. And I also think that for people who buy and appreciate the art, I think it's important for them to know so they can value it. There's a monetary side to it. My brother, you have a long relationship with Botsotso Jesters. In fact, ever since I know you, I think we're either collaborating with you on some level. Um, to have
mm,
a to have such a relationship, clearly you know each other well, and they know your process as well and know your art well. Um, it's almost
mm.
like it was a match made in heaven, man. Can you just tell my listeners, like, when did you first start working with him, and how was the relation? I mean, it's been over 20 years.
Yeah. Well, essentially, it's funny. Like I always used to say, like, I've encountered all the people that have inspired me, or people that are my icons. I've encountered all my icons except for those who then passed before my time. And maybe
Yeah,
some
man.
of those who passed before my time would have been maybe some of these jazz musicians, like your John Coltrane and your Thelonious Monk. They passed before my time. However, some of these guys who were writing for Botsotso, who are like your likes
Yeah.
of Simphiwe Kangwenya, Bra Ike, Stamto Supreme. I read their text when I was in high school. And for me, they are the voices of the land in terms of when I read their pieces, they spoke to my experience. They had a voice that was familiar. Their voices resonate.
Hello. I think there's just a break in transmission there. Sorry, Kabo. Here we go. I'm sorry. Pick it up now.
Okay, okay. So my relationship with Botsotso goes back, first of all, from when I encounter these influential poetry performers. However, I encounter that text first in a literary journal, and could have been one of those Botsotso which have like this where it was just a compilation of their writings, which is Botso Aikmbonene Kamelo, Siphiwe Kangwenya, Isabella Mutadinyane, Alan Koloski Howitz, and Anavani. And these voices of the land were basically writing or performing using a tone that I could relate to in terms of it was far more removed from the poetry that one was being exposed to in high school. And as somebody who was already drawn to the written word, I was really, really infatuated by this kind of writing. And I mean, I remember one of the pieces by Simphiwe Kangwenya, which speaks about uh, the words have escaped me, but basically these guys who are sitting at the corner and living in the city and just begging for cash as a form of occupation. And I'm like, I could see these images. And I think that's the thing about it. There are images in text just as much as there are images that are visual. So I could identify these images that were being described in the atmosphere of Siphiwe's lyrical style. And I'm not even going to talk about Stamto Supreme, because Stamto Supreme, Ike, when he speaks his so-called Stamto or Tsotita, somehow might say, I that spoke to my heart. And I think that's the first place where I encounter Botsotso Jesters as as a performing group of poets. And then there's the literary journal. The literary journal for me was very, very important because not only did it have the poetry, it had also short stories. It had um, it had photo essays. It had a literary criticism. So all of these aspects about Botsotso have always, for me, perhaps continued where a literary journal like Staff Rider took off from. So as Staff Rider dies out, you see the emergence of Botsotso, which has even till today has continued to to compile the voices of the land into text and making sure that under all these difficult circumstances, it is able to enable us writers to have a place where we could be able to publish our work and enable the reading audience to access the voices of the land in as vast as they come. So I think for me that has been important. However, I mean that I could have started publishing with Botsotso, publishing my poems first of all. Um, I don't know, maybe in the early 2000 or something like that. However, I think one of the major works that I started doing with Botsotso is the Red Ants exhibition.
I remember that.
Um, yes, the Red Ants exhibition. It also continues in the same vein where uh, the same vein in terms of how images, visual images, also incorporate writing. And I think that's one thing that we have continued, or how I have continued to work in or operate as somebody who considers the written word and also images and how they both operate. And 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 I think in this exhibition you also contributed your piece, because I think you also work in that your creative output basically it speaks over, as a vehicle for you to tell your narratives. And I
True.
think that's how we curated that exhibition, whereby we gave um, um, the contributors to that exhibition um, a, a couple of photographs to choose from and write, and you also contributed your piece, your poetry piece in that exhibition. However, that exhibition began essentially as a photo essay whereby I went into the city of Johannesburg, in one of those buildings which were being evicted, where occupants were being evicted, and I photographed the process, and then I went and wrote about my experiences as I photographed that whole entire eviction process by the Red Ants. And then Botsotso was interested in publishing that. I think they used some of the images as a front and a back cover for their book,
Yeah.
for the publication,
Yeah.
their literary journal. However, in the final in the final printing of that particular photo essay, they were very unhappy about how the prints actually eventually came out, and then and then we thought maybe we could take it further, and and I think they felt like there was a disservice, and they wanted to see that these images can even go further, and they did that. And I
Yeah.
think I was then I then to cut my teeth into curating photography exhibitions, because then I remember in that photography, or rather in the process of photographing the eviction process, one of my friends, Moshe Sekete, I was actually we were the only people who were photographing in that building. It was just myself and him. And I think the other guys with the bigger lenses could not come in, and they intimidated the workers. We had like those smaller lenses, and then we were not so intimidating. I think that's how they let us just photograph the process, And then, yeah, so we then decided to put it together with Moshe and bring poets like yourself, visual poets like yourself, and and then we did that with Botsotso. My relationship has grown stronger. It has grown
I
stronger
can
since
imagine.
ever since. Yeah, and eventually it's very interesting how things work, with because sometimes we tend to maybe overlook that there's almost like a line, because when I was in varsity, somehow Alan, the editor of Podzozo, was my examiner. And I only found out that obviously after I've written and after I had been marked and I received my results and so forth and so forth, the comments from my examiners and so forth regarding my work. Alan was my examiner, and how I find myself in that creative writing MA class at Rhodes University is that I encountered the head of that MA in creative writing, Robert Barrett, when I was probably like 19 years. So there's a line. There's a line. It's not by coincidence that we tend to kind of continue this working relationship. Robert Barrett at Rhodes, he was one of my supervisors for my thesis. So it is not by a coincidence. I think these are the people who've always had
Yeah, there's no
confidence,
such
or
thing
we
as coincidence.
relationship. Absolutely. So we've had a relationship with all these creative thinkers who then have also contributed in the development of of this particular publication, which is partly a thesis, and you also partly contributing into this. So it's not a coincidence. I think there's always a line of thinkers, a line of ideas, a line of events, a series of events that culminate into a particular set or piece that then obviously shapes that talks about where we come from. So yeah, so that's yeah. That's
You know,
awesome.
just for some perspective there, I just want to just for my listeners, the Rare Ants exhibition that was around, I think it was just before the 2010s. It was there about. That was actually an
Yes.
outstanding body of work. I besides my contribution, I remember the image as well, and I remember the
Mm-hmm.
show traveled a bit. I remember Washer telling me he did a gig. Was it you that told me he did a gig in Durban as well, if my memory serves me. So
Yes.
the
Yes.
show traveled quite a bit, and just an interesting bit about that. If my memory serves me, I actually remember the building where they got evicted.
Mm.
That was also around the
Yes.
time the city of Johannesburg was cleaning out everything for the football.
Yes.
And that gentrification really
Yes.
really started in the city, and eventually to Melbourne and so forth. So I just thought I just wanted to highlight that part just to give it some real perspective there.
Absolutely.
My brother. Okay,
Absolutely.
the relationship with Botsotso and is extensive, and it's
Mm.
multi-layered. Um, it's it's actually a beautiful story. I think within that is a story itself. It's actually quite
Wow.
a beautiful
Wow.
story, and thanks for sharing that. So
Yes.
actually, I wanna get to the poetry and to Kabelo the artist, because I know that you are also highly, well, let me just say, influenced by jazz. Um,
Yeah.
Living in a Amapiano era, of this generic kind of sound that is like just everywhere, just can't escape it.
Yeah.
I've actually
Mm.
I've actually I'm monitoring and I'm following how this type of sound is actually impacting art itself.
Mm.
There's a type of lackluster generic thing across all genres. In fact, anything that sells.
Mm.
And I like the way you spoke in the beginning about like how the process is actually part of the art and so forth. Um, so
Mm.
tell us about your relationship with music, man. How did the music affect the writing and the photography, or I don't know if it matters which one came first, but I know music and jazz
Yeah.
is a very big part of your, I would say, your creative personality. Yeah, man, just share
Yeah.
us, yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I think as African people, music is a part of our everyday life. It plays a part in our everyday life. Um, I mean, it's Easter time now. I'm going to the shop. There's a Zionist church at this house. I hear a drum beat, and that in itself, it just centers me. You know, and I'm just simply walking past in the street. You know, so music is every it is in a way like a part. It influences a part of our everyday walk of life, and I think that's the first thing. And obviously, growing up in an oral culture whereby oral traditions, whereby if there is no game that we played as children that did not incorporate music, and not only that, like the cool thing about perhaps when we were growing up is that we made our own toys in terms of not everything was digitalized, you know, and we made toys and play and sing and that's just how cool it is. So this thing of he makes his own instruments is nothing new to us. Yeah, we always improvise instruments according to the environment and obviously the times that we're living in. We have modified ways of making those games come alive, right? So that's the first thing, and then obviously then there would have been one of the most influential music style that came out of New York City, which will be MCing and hip hop. That in itself was very, very influential, and it was also inspired by the music jazz. Um, all of those elements, and especially now that we are much older, well, the more we trace and the more we look at how a lot of these musical instruments were being, or rather, how the sound was being carved into the music in terms of hip hop, we find that there are always jazz elements, whether somebody was sampling Miles Davis. So for one to then sort of find themselves listening to Miles or Train, or in the South African instance would be people like uh, Zim Nawana, who I also speak about, or rather have a conversation with. I think he's also within the line of Black consciousness, and the more one perhaps looks into Zim Nawani, they would then perhaps even begin to appreciate Coltrane, not the other way around. For me, it was more the appreciation for people like Zim sound that I began to actually enjoy a bit more of the Coltrane, or the American Cat. The more I listen to Andile Yanana, the more I listen to Hebito Ayedi, the more I listen to the Dozo Makatins, the more I probably will even go further and branch out and listen to Thelonious Monk. So the more and maybe vice versa, the more I listen to a bit of Monk, the more I go back and actually even find something richer in Begum Seleko. So this conversation between the United States and South Africa as a jazz mecca has been continuous. It has not stopped. It is, and especially growing up in the city of Johannesburg, the sounds, the experiences of oppression, the experiences of how we pride ourselves through the adversity, it has always kind of continued to emerge in various ways, in the way that we paint, the way that we dance, the way that we dress ourselves up, and the way we style ourselves, because we've often styled ourselves. And a lot of the stuff that we do would then perhaps go and infiltrate a contemporary space. Funny enough, like I don't think there is a music industry in South Africa as such, but however, some of us are more fortunate to be in line, or maybe be in the company of great musicians, because of our devotion to our practice, which is either as writers or as poets, as people who are photographers. We then sort of, the musicians often seek that's a little bit of something that we write about them, a little bit of photographs that we make of them. So the space of avant-garde music making would not be actually be visible. It did not have so much visibility had it not been for all these other artists who make images, portraits of these great musicians that we have here at home. So, and obviously, like, this might not be so much in primetime television. However, I mean, a painting speaks a million words about the space. A photograph speaks a million words about the sound of the music. So there's always a relationship, and I think, more so there is a sense of camaraderie, a sense of community of creative, or maybe more serious artists in this country, who are not so much in the limelight, so to speak.
Yeah.
However, able to maybe develop newer spaces of performances to cater for the arts.
That's a very interesting point that you some of our listeners, there's one of our neighbors is pulling in here, so that's clanking sound there. You actually raising yes, as my brother, very interesting point about I like how you put it, serious art. I think that's a cool way of raising it. and how the one hand sort of feeds the other, and the lack of spaces for that. Just how I put that together is that's actually what we're experimenting with as we speak right now. Because this COVID pre-COVID world, post-COVID, sorry, I taught us one thing is that physical spaces are actually quite limiting, um, and our audience is global because the conversation we're having now, I'm sure, can be felt throughout the world. My brother, and I still want to pick up on that point, and I want to talk about the where the book is available, and maybe get into some poetry. So we'll do that in the next session. So I'm just going to close this session and send you another link and kick start it after that. All right?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Just okay. That's fine. Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, everyone. No, excuse me. Yeah, after that break, my brother Kabza, we were just talking offline now briefly about the rollout of where can we get hungry on arrival, and we're just and just for the listeners, we are living in a different time, and how you sell books and how you get books out there as also James. So just explain to us what's happening with in terms of Botsotso. What do you guys have planned? You made something of maybe doing something with kitties in the future.
Yeah. So I think the idea of moving as a stable is very important. I think I come from as we've discussed, like I come from a stable that is Botsotso Publishers, and we've got award-winning writers who are young, part of my generation, emerging writers, not aspiring as such, because we've been in the game, but
bro. Yeah.
But obviously we are doing things differently, and we're bringing in newer elements in terms of marketing our products. So a lot of the stuff will be on the website, Botsotso website, which is consistently being updated. So you go to Botsotso Arts link, and then you will find a lot of the information. There's also on Twitter. We're also on Twitter. I'm also on Twitter as Jasmine Cabs, and then also Instagram. I think that's where you probably see a lot of the performances. So as we launch this product, which we will eventually launch within the next month, which is May, we will find. I think so far there's a nice venue in Braamfontein. But however, not only am I looking in Johannesburg, because a lot of the book doesn't only speak about instances of the experiences that I have in the city. I also have other parts of that that I've touched base on, and I think that's the most important thing, which is there are sort of underrepresented communities or underrepresented languages that actually emerge in the book, because I am a multilingual writer. I speak various languages. I speak numerous languages. So in the book, you'll find that there's English. There's also, I was raised in a Sesotho speaking tradition, and I also bring in associations of Sesotho and English in the same poem. So there are plays here that, or rather, underrepresented text in South African contemporary writing or South African contemporary poetry writing, where like I ring in these elements, whether it's also Stamto as well. And then, various languages and various communities as well, whether they be rural communities, some kind of rural fiction going on here, where I speak about my experiences outside of the maze, outside of the Afropolitan city of Johannesburg. So I think that's very important as well. And more than any other thing, I think the way that the book is done, I think it's highly imperative that one considers having a copy of this book, because as you can see, I'm just flashing through it. There are images that are emerging in the book. So the book itself is it's got shelf value. So you must have a copy of it to really kind of get a deeper sense as to what this book is ought to do. Because on the one hand, when I actually sort of read the text, as opposed to so there's the compiling aspect. However, when I read the text, I find that the text has a sense of historical value. So the writing in the book has significant historical value. And I think also that comes through because I also started writing around the history of South African jazz. And I think my experience as somebody who then started conducting historical research then it's somehow sipped into the book without me being aware of it, but that comes from me reading the book, not necessarily having compiled it, so that's a different way, so I'm looking at the book as a reader and finding a different sense of value that it brings. Yeah, so that's
I love that. I love that, my brother. I mean, just to the listeners, so they can find you on all the social media platforms, including the Botsotso link, and I'm sure the dates, when the dates are finalized and so forth, will be available on there, correct?
Absolutely. Can you
Absolutely. Just give out the Botsotso or the Twitter handle? Which handle are we using? Is it your account or is it the publisher's account?
So I think you can just go to Botsotso link, and I think you'll find that's the website. That's where you'll find a lot of
everything, all the information.
The information.
Yeah, man. You know, one of the I want to add another point on what you were saying about the entire book's experience. One of the things that I'm aware of about your work is that it always included multi mediums. So it almost makes sense in putting the book out there that there must be definitely a strong performance element. There must definitely be music. Definitely. Yes. Is there a strategy around that? Is there given or basically what I should be more direct? Is that is there going to be any like online performances or anything using the digital space, or is all the performance based and all the launch let me just say material going to be in person?
I think it will be a bit of both. It will be, I mean, I think everyone is concerned about the spaces of performances. And I think this is probably, you see, that's where not just the poet comes in. I think that's where the poet becomes almost a cultural worker, where they are bringing these concerns and advocating a sense of change in the space, and critically looking at how these spaces can be infiltrated. So I think one of the ways is to consider poetry as, or rather bring in the element, or poetry built with music in mobilizing these concerns. I think that's how we've often done it, and I think that has worked in itself. So it's not just poetry on the page, but it's poetry also maybe with a drum and maybe with some saxophone. And I think those are the elements that are captured in the book. However, then I will have to kind of physically do that in spaces of performances, and I think that's basically
my brother. I think that's also where our relationship has definitely got more room for collaboration is that digital space and using that, because we at Gallery 360 Africa is definitely looking at that. And man, that's just a point I want to make about that. That's something I'm really working with at the moment. Also, I just want to make a point. So we're almost middle of April. So the book will go out, or rather the episode will go out this week. So if there's any estimated guest at the back there. So I guess greetings. My brother, we were talking. We were talking about your work. Man, as I said, I guess my relationship with you, I know you as a poet, I know you as a performer. With the and there. Do you mind reciting or performing at least one piece that is available in the book? I will cut it up and I'll post it with the episode as well. Is there or let me also ask you, is there a signature piece or piece that everybody knows Kabelo Mofokeng of? I have a few ideas, but I'll, I'll let you say.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe I should read one of the newer pieces, like the ones that I felt like they needed to come out. As okay, let me just wait for Mudupi to do this.
Okay.
It's okay. As I've said, like a lot of the pieces, obviously, like as somebody who's a trained photographer, as somebody who is a practicing poet, and with a deep love for music, a lot of the pieces that I write bring in all these elements. They consider these elements, and obviously, like they have a life of their own. And I'd like to pick up one of the pieces that I think maybe is a lot more quieter. Let me close this door.
Sure.
I like to consider a piece that is more quieter, and I think maybe speaks about the idea of the sounds of community. So music is not just in the music, but it's mostly also music is in the world.
Okay.
Yeah. So this piece, it's more quieter, but I think it's relevant. It's called Somewhere. Somewhere inside a block of flats, a trombone wields a blue flame, then dies. Somewhere in the wake of a suburban silence, a cigarette cough ruptures a lung, then quietly sleeps. Somewhere inside our tyrant, black screams rise from a burning tire, refusing to deny. Somewhere across a treacherous road, a racist hound grinds her teeth unashamedly. Somewhere behind a curtained window, a candle sobs, slowly suffocates. Somewhere beneath the crack of moonshine, rust permeates dawn, tarnishing our silver dreams. Somewhere behind shut doors and the electric strings of wired fences, I roam and return darkly.
Sure. Kabelo Mofokeng, ladies and gentlemen. Well done, my king. I could actually do an episode just on describing the poem. I see the writing hand is as strong as ever, not stronger. The sound, the images is quite which is quite crazy because relatively quiet where I am now. I guess the acoustics of the poem was loud. Was loud, my brother. I'm about a couple of 100 kilometers from you, and I could hear it. I could feel that. That's fantastic, man. I hope the listeners could also get a could get a taste of it. My king, man. Thanks, like, for coming through, man. And like, this was a blast. This was an absolute blast. I think that yeah, man. I'll do everything on my side here to push the book. There's also the app that's coming out, and we can have a conversation about the e-commerce side of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a few weeks. My brother, thanks a lot for coming through. And so my listeners, man, just remember that you'll find a lot. Sure, Mikey.
It's lovely seeing you, my brother, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you, my brother.
It's been a long time coming, and thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
And it's lovely to see that the Mandingo piece there. I can see
it. Yeah. We represent it all over.
Yeah.
I'll try to switch it up
Wow.
maybe later on in the year with new pieces I'm working on.
It's fantastic.
The only thing that has changed over time is the gray hairs, my brother. It's the gray hairs has increased, but everything else is the same, eh? Yeah,
Wow,
so
it's
I
fantastic.
keep
Wow.
the beards like trimmed because I think the big
Yeah.
I don't think it's great. I'm still so sensitive.
Well, lovely to see you.
Kabelo Mofokeng,
Yeah.
thanks for coming through, my brother. I'll keep you up to speed with the episode goes live. For my listeners, I'll catch you next week. One love.
One love.